This episode of Untold Stories is sponsored by Coin Gaming, Nexo, and Kava Labs. You'll hear more about them later on in this episode. What is up, everyone? I am Charlie Shrem, and you are watching and listening Untold Stories, where twice a week we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders to finally understand how this movement truly came to be. This industry and all cryptocurrency, between all the buzzwords we hear on the news and things that our friends tell us, are very complex. And I believe that in order to understand where we're going and how we're getting there and what's important and what's BS and really important life topics, that's my job here on this show. And we'll be able to take that information and live better lives and trade off that and build tools and for our own freedom. Because when your freedom is taken from you and you have nothing left, the only thing you can do is build the tools to give yourself your own freedom back and to take it, because no one's going to give it to you. And that's what I had to do. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of end of the days, right? I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. And today I was actually joined by a good friend of mine, Shawn Owen, who really pioneered the concept of Bitcoin backed loans. And nowadays it's crypto loans, and it's almost like every company that launches is offering this. Well, back in 2016, when he came up with the idea, this was before the ICO bubble of 2017. It was not only something that he had to uh, convince people, but he had to n- like pioneer a whole new concept of understanding of how we looked at crypto, because we never looked at Bitcoin and any crypto as an asset that can be collateralized. And nowadays, that's all we're doing, from NFTs to DeFi. It's just collateralizing our crypto to get another asset that we can then do whatever we want with. And that's what our whole industry is doing right now. Sean pioneered that with Salt lending. I'm very excited to talk to him and for you guys to hear how it went. Of course, I wouldn't be here today without my sponsors, but really my producers at the Blockworks Group, blockworks.co. They are a media and event company, and now they have breaking news and they come out with all the best content. There's nowhere else you should go for your audio and visual content. Blockworks.co. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And here's the show. We are here with Shawn Owen. Shawn, you're arguably one of the pioneers, and I guess it's kind of cool for people call me a pioneer, so I can call you one too. But really, in the space of what we now know is a norm of crypto-backed lending, I remember with Salt lending going back to 2017. I remember everyone was even just saying how the business model wouldn't work, and the ability to go and custodialize your crypto and then borrow against it with the crazy volatility of the day, and then coming off of like 2017 bull market, there was very few other companies, either projects, coins, and tokens doing this. Very, very few. It was very small. This wasn't the top of the news. People weren't saying this is what we need. It wasn't like a given enormous standard. You had to almost like go out and say, hey, not only do I need to convince you of crypto, I need to convince you to invest in my business. I need to convince you that this model that no one else has done before can actually exist. And then you did that, and then now and that's doing its amazing thing. And now you come here and you started Equa, and so that's another project. But really, we've jumped all over. We've got the listeners on the hook. They want to hear more. So let's rewind and really, I'm gonna blow you up in a little bit, because in a good way, because you came from very humble beginnings. I remember talking to you when you were debating coming over from the like the non crypto industry to the crypto industry. But I want to ask you, like, we were talking really quickly before the show started, and I wanted to hear your answer. So I figured we'd hit record. We were talking about how various cities, states, and countries tackle like homeless and the social net a little bit better than others. And kind of we were wondering why no one has ever tackled these type of social justice projects, or even like tackling homelessness in your local town. How do you solve that in like a for-profit way?
I think that you bring up the question that you mentioned the word social in there. And I always think of tragedy of the commons whenever too many people are a part of something, nobody owns it. There's no direct responsibility. And one of the things with for profit that I've always been such a huge fan of with the market is that when you're responsible or accountable to something, you're like, I have all the risk here, I own all this. And you see this in smaller communities. Like, I don't know a lot of small cities that have a big homeless problem. And it's because there's more of a community, there's more direct
Sure.
interference or interaction with people. So, how to solve the problem, I think, is a big topic and probably goes on for quite a while. But we would have to go back and look at just the structure of how these cities are deciding to organize themselves. You brought up the home. I think
It doesn't
the
need
home.
to be a small city though. Like I live in a city of, you know, six-figure amount of people, 150,000 full-time residents, and then you have almost a quarter million in the county, which isn't much bigger. And we joke that if you want to get involved in politics, just walk down Main Street. You know those old movies you'd see where like people can go to the barber shop and talk to the mayor. Literally, the mayor is having coffee right downstairs, probably right now. If I want to talk to my mayor, I just go and be like, "Hey, Mr. Mayor," and he's there without security. Like direct democracy can work, should work, and maybe this is a good segue into like how we eventually move over into blockchain credit and capital markets. Because everyone thinks that it's all based on code and math, and they forget the whole social aspect to it. And so you can have, for example, a project that all of the token holders want to approve something great, but the project simply can't reach quorum. So it's like a problem with the mechanics of decentralized governance, not a problem with the governance itself. Meaning that we never really like war gamed what would happen if like people don't show up to the vote, you know, on decentralized like governance. It's not even baked into the. Someone I was talking to the CEO of this one project the other day. He's like, yeah, we never even baked it into our code. What happens if we don't reach quorum? But um, let's start from the beginning. Tell me, you are from Colorado, and actually Eric Voorhees, one of my good friends, is one of your good friends too, and I believe that's how you got involved in our space. Let's go back to 2016. How did you decide to go from running one of the largest or like a big restaurant business in Colorado to run to literally pioneering crypto backed lending in our industry today?
So I think it actually goes back quite a bit further. My story really to me starts in 2008, 2007, leading to 2008. Just a quick history lesson there for me to get going. Is I had just bought a house. I was very happy. I was naively happy with life. Everything just seemed to be functioning perfectly around 2006, 2007, and just a whole bunch of different circumstances all came together at the same time for me. I had been invited by my brother to go to this thing called Rally for the Republic, which was Ron Paul running for presidency in 2008. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not into politics. That
Uh,
doesn't make any sense why I do that. And then right after that, it was September. So we went from September to October. We have the crash, and suddenly all my money was cut in half, and I was terrified. And it was this fear of holy shit moment of I need to understand more. And I'm sitting there with all this new information. It completely changed my paradigm all the way. Suddenly I was obsessed with hard money, economics, freedom, liberty. I started looking for everything online related to wherever you could get information. And there was this interesting reality where everybody around me seemed terrified and fearful. And yet there was this optimistic, bright light of Ron Paul just calling it like it was, saying, this is the answer, gold money. We can go back to this. This is how the country was founded. This can be great. And all these people cheering and rah-rahing. And I was really impressed by that. And so I decided to get turned into a bit of an activist on my free time and was looking at how to get hard money or other types of money, whether it be all types of projects have been started with countries
what does
down to
that
the
mean,
city state
hard
issuing
money?
their own money.
Can
Well,
you
gold,
define
for
that?
example, so the whole topic was around gold that got me really focused on money. Stocks and real estate and everything crashes. Suddenly I'm like, wow, we don't have control over the basics. All these things I thought were true are not true. Do we even live in a free economy? Is this a free market? All that, everything was just shattered open all over the course of a couple months. And I just completely went down the rabbit hole deep. And the hard money concept was something that made sense to me because no governments control it. We couldn't be manipulated. We couldn't have this economy that was propped up. There was this
Why
sense
did
of
your
how
brain
things
look
used to
for
be.
that hedge though?
Well, it wasn't even necessarily a hedge for me at that point, although I totally think it is a hedge. It was more about what happens if you need food, water, shelter,
Mm.
money, commodities, barter? What happens in that environment? And how can you have this sense of freedom and wealth and prosperity? You have to become sovereign. You have to really start thinking about how to protect yourself. You have to take on all these new concepts of, which are not new concepts at all. Of course, they're how it always used to be. But there was this notion of money that's at the center of it. And I'd been investing in real estate, investing in business and stocks and bonds, and completely just thought, maybe I'm missing something really big here. Maybe I need to understand what money is. And I don't know. I must have missed something here because I feel like I got blindsided. I wasn't prepared or anything. I felt totally vulnerable. And so I started advocating and doing meetups, Liberty on, it was called Campaign for Liberty. And I was going to Liberty on the Rocks and Campaign for Liberty and all these different types of meetups. And I was going to give it a test to see, can information share? Can the truth get out there? Can we use silver for money, not gold? Because I was buying a little bit of gold here and there, but it's pretty expensive and hard to find when you really attempt it.
It
So,
is.
I found out almost immediately that it doesn't work. Like we could all be advocating for it. Yeah, here, look at the silver coin. That's really cool. Nobody's going to take it when you go to pay at the end of the tab, right? And so we live in this society where everything has already gone digital, whether we had recognized it or not. It's been digital for a long time, and that really led me to just paying attention to all this libertarian philosophy. Signed up for a thing called the Free State Project and was listening to a
Oh
podcast
yeah, me
called
too.
Free State, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I remember when I first heard about your name, it was like nobody around back then, right? And so when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was on some future podcast related to Free State. I think it was Free Talk
Probably
Live
Free
out of New
Talk
Hampshire.
Live, yeah. Free
Yeah,
Talk
and
Live
I
is the
was,
reason that we all are in that Bitcoin exists today because myself
I
included,
agree
almost
with that.
everyone, yeah, heard about Bitcoin
Yeah, this is
from
pre
him.
charts. This is pre everything, right? So it was. I downloaded the first QT wallet and was like, "Wow, that's really interesting." I've got computer stuff. I've always been in computers. I'm into gold. This guy is saying this is kind of like digital gold. You could imagine like cash on the internet. I was like, I of course didn't know anything about
But the
CPU, GPU at
messages
the
were
time.
always, sorry to interrupt you, but those messages were always Bitcoin could be. Bitcoin could
Yes.
be. This
Oh yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
It was a dream of movement, a religion in the better sense of the word. It wasn't about value and money and that at that point it was we need to create that. It was the
Yeah,
builder
building
time.
freedom was this it was like this underpinning of, wow, these guys like decided to just innovate. The cypherpunks, they've been up to this for a long time, the punks, the cypherpunks, and they've there's this problem that people have been trying to solve for a long time that I'm now becoming aware of, right? So then I do the deep dive, find out about gold and all the historical stuff around why gold didn't work. And I just started daydreaming about all these things. And it was back then you'd imagine like, wouldn't it be cool if you ever met somebody else who was like into this, or we could trade, or we could think about paying for a beer or something. But there wasn't anybody. Like when the first few times I kept poking around, figuring out Bitcoin, there was that I think you've brought up many times. There was the ability to wiregram or moneygram somebody money that
Mm.
you didn't know that was anonymous on the internet. I just wasn't that connected because I was super busy. So it was one of these things where whenever I get home from work, from running restaurants and being just exhausted, I would geek out and try to do more research about Bitcoin and Liberty and gold and these
And you
things.
said one day
You
I'm
know,
gonna work in this industry.
well, and who knew there'd be an industry
Yeah,
like
right?
that's
There
just
was no
it's. I'm still
industry.
so amazed
What do you
and
call
just
that though?
grateful.
What do you call us now? Are we an ecosystem? Are we an industry? What is this? And when did it become that? Like when
Mm.
what is it called when we went from just a bunch of kids on the forums and then on the internet and some stuff like that. And then businesses started around it to service just that little industry. And someone was asking me the other day, and he's like, "Why does Bitcoin have value?" And I said, "Bitcoin has value because you have 10 years of very slowly people believing it has value, starting with the early people.
Leaf.
I, I mean, I was just simply selling electronics in my warehouse for Bitcoin, and I was pricing it in whatever I felt it was worth. And that's how prices started becoming. That's how a lot of these people were just selling services, their own service, like honey and baklava and alpaca socks. And these are people who priced it in their own value. This is what it cost me to sew this sock, or however you make socks, this is what the value is. When did that change, and what do you call that?
I call it an evolution or an adoption curve. And it's interesting because I've been asking myself this question lately, where every morning you wake up every day and there's some monumental new thing like
Mm.
Tesla or Michael Saylor or Paris Hilton, even though she's been in it for a long time. And there's just this
She's an
boom, boom,
OG.
boom. She's definitely OG. Yeah, I think people should recognize that. And then I guess where I've been coming from lately is like, what happens once everybody is using Bitcoin, which is now becoming very realistic, right? It's becoming real. It's
Mm.
happening, and it's like we're all, hopefully the dream is realized where we're all part of a community in the society, right? That's, I think, what the big vision always was, is that there could be this decentral version of money that nobody controlled, that everybody could participate, the censorship resistant ability
Fully
for all of us
permissionless.
to be a part of this community, right? Is something that was that still is very important to me to figure out how we get there. So I don't know what you call it other than adoption or evolution or something, right? It's a great question.
In inevitableness. Like, it's such a
The inevitable, yeah,
hard word to pronounce for me.
inevitable in retrospect, it was inevitable. I love that tweet. That will be classic forever from Elon
Yeah,
Musk.
right. So going
But yeah, it's just been fascinating to see. It's amazing.
so I mean, you see you s this see, book Bitcoin was in a bear market, and I remember when I had first met you and spoke to you, I was, uh the biggest buzzword of the day were DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization. There was no DeFi, there was no NFT, there was pretty
Yes.
much all Bitcoin, almost no altcoins, and Ethereum was pretty much on its last legs because of the DAO. And I was just getting
Yeah.
out of jail, and I was saying, I have no industry left. It's in smothers. It's we've got just going through a bear market when I went in a year half before and would come out and it's still in the bear market. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And then something changed. Um, Entrepreneurs like you and others saw in the ashes, saw like this industry that was ripe for the picking. Like the fruit was perfect. And you all kind of like came up with these novel ideas. Some didn't. Some were stupid, like the Bitcoin toaster, and some other things that came out of those years. But Bitcoin backed loans uh, at the time was kind of looked at as crazy, right? Like, who would give you their Bitcoin and then borrow against it? And then how would you as a
Who's
business
going to
be
give
able
you
to do
money?
that, right?
Right. Yeah, no, it was, it's funny because there were so
It's
many precursors that led up to it, but it's
tell
just
us.
such a simple concept, right? Like just such a simple concept that I feel like it was really, 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 really painful to advocate for. And just because the you would think we were like, okay, we're here. This is this thing we can do, and then you realize that people are hearing about this word Bitcoin for the very first time ever when you're sitting down with them. And so I had the timeline way wrong. Originally, I was thinking about how to go talk to banks and stuff,
Yeah.
which was just totally wrong. Um, but yeah, the idea is so primitive and just like obvious when you think about it, right? And for me, it became obvious over a sequence of different events because I'd been really looking at Bitcoin from a payment system. I'd been hosting all these Bitcoin meetups and was really enthusiastic. I was a huge cheerleader, but I still wasn't able to do it full time or anything. The closest I could get to full time was inviting people into my businesses and letting them all spend their coin and rally around getting some speakers in and things like this, or just having good conversations and letting it just be a social community, which was amazing because it went from nobody around. There were a few people out there with their name on it, but not many. I was not the guy with my name on it. I was the one just wanting to meet people in person for the first time and see if we could talk about it. And these meetups were really great. And then the IRS came out and said, this is going to be treated like property. We had a little bit of clarity, after
Sure.
I'd been trading on Mt. Gox, lost money, all these other things, and just looking for any opportunity to play with anything that came out, anything that ever existed was like, oh, wow, there's somebody else doing something. Let's go check it out. This is amazing. And you could kind of follow everything that was going on back then. And then I was firsthand witnessing people be super enthusiastic, pay for a plate of food or some beers, and be all excited that the transaction was instant almost. And then they would immediately be like, okay, I got to go buy more right now. And that happened at the same time where there was this tax situation with treating it like property rather than currency. And I'd been looking at how to disrupt or think about what you could do for taking payments, because at that time I was getting instant payments to come through. I'd proved it in a model with a CFO to show that this was a positive, net positive, that you could take this stuff and not pay, not only not pay, but you could get a discount because these people would come in
Sure. Yeah.
enthusiastic and you saved all the credit card fees. And that went out the window pretty much immediately as soon as I recognized this is not, people are not going to spend it that for a while, or maybe never, if it's going to be treated like, if it's taxed this way. So what's the next best thing? Well, we're all wanting to hold it anyway. So maybe we'll find a way to hold long enough where we'll come back full circle, and that was kind of my perspective, thinking about it from the standpoint of what do you do with this and what can you do with it? And there was so many other interesting things going on around that time. But it was a specific breakfast meeting where in 2015, around September 29th to 2015, where a group of us who had been working on this project called BitClutch to figure out how to solve payments in the marijuana industry, saying,
Mm.
hey, look, you guys have this huge problem in Colorado. It was one of the first states, I think it was the second state to go to legalize it, yet it wasn't legal federally. So you had this huge problem in the fact that the state was allowing you to do something that you could still totally go to jail for federally. And so you had all this cash, like they were literally lining people up with 7 extra employees with Febreze bottles to Febreze all of the cash to make it not smell like marijuana coming from these
Oh my
dispensaries
God.
that were popping up. All this money that was coming into the system that didn't have a place to go because nobody would bank them. And there was no banks. And so we were like, okay, this makes total sense. We could apply Bitcoin, let it be a settlement in between, get people to start thinking about how ATMs could pop up. ATMs had just started to become kind of an idea. Uh, and, it didn't take that long. It probably took about 7 or 8 months to realize this is not going to happen for two reasons. One, the political environment wasn't going to allow it. It was going to have to come at the federal level, period. Two, all these dispensary owners were looking at us like we were freaking crazy. They were like,
Mm.
that's cool, but like I'm already up to my eyeballs in risk. I don't need any new risk. And I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Bitcoin sounds awesome, but I need a bank. I need a
Yeah.
credit card. I need to be able to take credit cards. So we kind of finally put that to rest. And right around that time, had this breakfast meeting where we said, let's just throw our good ideas together. This place called One Fold in Colorado. And we put together 3 or 4 good ideas. And it was really Voorhees that was the one who said, just his words that I think were, it'd be really cool is if you could just get anybody to give you some cash for holding this. If you could just lock it up, put it in a vault, we could cryptographically and lock it, and somebody would see that it's valuable and give you cash.
Hmm.
And I was just I was like, yeah, that's totally what I'm seeing too. That would be amazing. Right around the same time, I've been working with my banker. He was like, normally we shut everybody's bank accounts down. The only reason I'm having this meeting with you is they wanted to shut your bank account down, but you came and met with us so many different times. We don't want to do that. We just want to let you know, hey, we don't think you
Yeah.
should be dealing with this Bitcoin thing. And I was telling him like, well, look, I could apply for a car. This Bitcoin is worth a lot more than the car. You can treat it better on a balance sheet. You can instantly verify it. I was like this huge enthusiasm, person
Yeah. You were
telling
selling
this
them as
banker.
Bitcoin as a collateralized asset, right?
Yes, yeah, and he was like, "Yeah, we don't understand that. It's got to be in an account where there's custody and authority and all this." And I was like, "Oh man!" So I saw the opportunity pretty quickly, and we had the other big idea I was really interested in pivoting to was what I would call NFTs now. But I was just looking at how do you take digital property, and especially with music, because I've always been very passionate
Yeah.
for artists and thinking about how to solve the royalties problem, which I'm so excited is now kind of starting to happen. But it was way too early back then. I'd been looking at one guy's project, and it was the scaling problems with Bitcoin were starting to crop up, and it was like, damn it, it's not going to work. We're not going to have these instant transactions. We need something slower. So it was kind of obvious that salt was the thing that I was the most passionate about and willing to dedicate my life to at that point in time to support Bitcoin. And that's probably about as good as it gets on that question, right?
Yeah. It's the most detailed answer I've ever got to that question. So thank you. It's a
Yeah,
great way
thank you,
of
by
putting
the
it all
way, for being
together.
an apostle of Satoshi. I think about this a lot, like just the sacrifices that have been made by people to dedicate throwing their time and their energy into supporting this concept of Bitcoin is not only proof of work from the computing level, but
Mm.
it's literal proof of work and energy that's gone into this at such an amazing level. So
Proof of
I
brain.
commend you. I think I speak for many people who are just very happy that you've been out here doing what you're doing and just still putting the good word out. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. So, with a pretty crazy, chaotic year behind us, we've got 200 reasons to put your Bitcoin to the test, courtesy of my friends at Bit Casino. And I've gotten you an amazing, amazing offer. You have to go to bitcasino.io/Shrem to get it. But all you have to do is wager 5 MBTC, small amount, wager 5 MBTC or more on Bit Casino on any slot, and you get 200 free spins to their Legacy of Dead game. You get 200 free spins, 200 spins to win more money for free. And all you have to do is do one slot bet. I love these guys. Bit Casino was ahead of the crypto game before that game even got going. The original Bitcoin led online gaming destination. They really, really, really pushed and to continue to set the standard for fun, fast, and fair gameplay because you have the blockchain. You might as well be fair and transparent while you're at it. Deposit, wager, and withdraw in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron, Litecoin, so many cryptos, all in real time, all the time with Bit Casino. Moving right along. Hey guys, it's Charlie. And remember that time we interviewed Anthony Trenchev from Nexo Finance? Well, they are on a roll right now, offering 5.9% APR on your crypto credit. You'll be able to borrow at less than 6% on some of your crypto. They got a savings account that's offering 12% interest a year. And now they have an integrated exchange so you can trade between all your cryptos without ever leaving their integrated wallet. It's so amazing. Make sure you check it out at nexo.io and start earning interest, start managing your assets, because crypto banking just got real with Nexo. I love that. That's awesome. I love Nexo. It's such a great company. I want you guys to take a moment and check out what the folks and my newest sponsors over at Kava Labs are doing, because up until now, whenever you do anything related to DeFi, like borrowing, lending, loans, bonds, stable coins for Binance, Huobi, Kraken, or all these different places, they actually have been using Kava Labs on the back end. And now you can get those same APYs and those same awesome features that these financial institutions have been getting. You can get them too. All you have to do is go to kava.io and check it out. But on top of that, Kava and Binance, working for International Women's Month, have been launching a $50,000 prize pool that's ending this week. All you have to do is go to Binance or click the link in my show notes. You'll be able to go on there, trade $100. All you do is trade $100 and you get cards that you're entered into drawings that you can get up to $50,000, a part of a prize pool. Make sure you check them out, kava.io. It's interesting that you bring up that proof, because I believe that proof of work should be relabeled as proof of brain, but maybe Satoshi didn't want to do that for whatever reasons, because it was a little confusing. But that's what you alluded to, right? Bitcoin is, like, at the end of the day, is just a battery for energy. We have, and it's a way to tokenize and commoditize and then collateralize. Oh man, I can't come up with all these C's, man. Energy, commoditize, collateralize. It's all energy. Energy is the one resource that in the world that not only it's a finite resource, but at the end of the day, energy can never be transferred or created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So that energy exists in probably the smartest muscle and is our brains, right? So when we're looking at latency, everyone's thinking of like these big data centers and Bitcoin miners and everything that's creating that's taking the transferring of energy, of water power, going through a dam, spinning a wheel, and then it's transferring into this token that we call Bitcoin, and that's why it has value. Because these miners have been selling it since the beginning of Bitcoin's time, and enough people on the other side have say, I want this, I see value and demand. Therefore, you create a perfect equilibrium of balance of supply and demand. But going back to the proof of brain, let's go continue for the zero latency aspect of it. And let's say, really, it's not the energy transference is not the water rushing down, the waterfall that's being transferred. It's not nuclear power. It's not splitting of the atoms. It's not solar energy. It's the brain power that was used to figure out how to harness everything I just described, and the constant brain power needed to maintain all of that and to do it in a way with the most efficient way possible, zero latency. And that is what the transference of energy is. So really, like, proof of brain is what powers Bitcoin, in
I
my
love
opinion.
that. I was going to add something too, which is that you can't have that conversation of energy without thinking about the concept of time and this clock keeping mechanism of how much energy has gone into something over how much time, or how much
Oh,
energy
that's a
has
good point.
transferred over time, and just how humans generate so much energy, right? Every day our heart and mind is pumping, we're pumping it into something. The only other good C words I would add there is co-creation and collaboration are two that I think is just really empowering for us to think about, like, how this is coming together from so many different angles. From a truly, we use the word decentral all the time, but thinking about, like,
Sure.
true decentralization is every individual participating in something. That would be the ultimate concept of, or an abstract of the max decentralization, would be some network of society where every individual is the node. And it really is interesting to think about the
Yeah.
proof of brain, because I could take that in like a positive and a terrifying way, right? Of how brains can be used to mine Bitcoin. But
But that's
where
what
do
it
you think that's
is.
going? I mean, I want to start asking you questions if I could,
I
but
have to there are a lot of things that I can't say because I'll be called crazy. And there are a lot of things that I've been waiting until the development and the attitude towards crypto has changed before I can say things. And I don't, I'll at the end of the day, this technology and its first use cases, that is Bitcoin, and the further you have like the Ethereum virtual machine and you have Tor complete software and all the further development that we're going to take, at the end of the day, it's creating the zero it's gonna have at the end of the day, there's gonna be 0 time. It'll be milliseconds in the beginning, but it'll be 0 time of how our brains communicate with each other. And it'll all be done on blockchain technology in a decentralized way. Our brains will all be decentralized identities where the blockchain network doesn't know who one brain from the next. And you control all that data. It's fully permissionless, fully decentralized. But that's how it's all going to come to be. Everything that we do now that takes time is not going to take time anymore. Anything that we do now that takes time is going to change, especially at first in the digital realm. And it's scary and you have to think about it because I can ask you, it's like you you ever see that like cover of Time magazine that talks about the coming of like the devil of the satanic wars where it's like there will be a currency of the
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
the one
world,
currency.
Yeah, so, like, how do I go to sleep at night furthering this industry, furthering this revolution, but at the same time, am I bringing the coming of, like, the end of the world? Or is the coming of the end of the world a bad thing if you look at that? Because maybe that's when freedom actually I don't know, it's scary, though, and I don't think I'm, like,
I
smart
love this
enough.
topic.
Yeah, it's
No, I
scary.
think it's amazing because, like all things, you've got with technology, especially, there's this dual side of the sword, right? Like, there's two sides to everything, whether it's atomic energy, Bitcoin, you name it, right? Everything has the potential for, it almost feels like balanced, equal good or bad. And to me, it's the point that I feel strongly about, because I've thought about this a long time. I don't, there's probably no perfect answer for it, but it's having control versus having somebody else control you at the end of the day. Meaning, if there's digital information that you control and yours and I am equal to you, and we both have the ability to participate with each other consensually, which is the C word that I love almost the most, is consent,
Yeah.
then we live in a good world, because bad things don't happen when people consent to them in the same way, right? When you look at almost anything bad that's ever happened, you could say to the person that it happened to, did you want that to happen? And
No.
would you have
Yeah.
had that happen if they consented? No. The answer is obviously no. And so when we think about this plugging into this hive mind type instant brain, where this could go with one currency, I think it's fundamental that we face the facts that we cannot
Force it.
proceed any longer thinking about authority and authoritarians having the ability to control something like that. History is just plagued with so many examples of control gone bad, even in the company, like a small company, or even in a family, even at the smallest unit. When when somebody has authority over somebody else, and somebody can be compelled to do something without their consent, we have a problem. And so, to me, it's, can we do this in a way that is decentralized? It's not
Hmm.
even can we; it's a must. It is a, we must have a decentralized system where there are no particular rulers that can abuse
Well, let
this
me unpack
power.
that for a second, and using the family unit and then, like, looking at, like, Nazi Germany, for example. What happens in a situation where like the family unit is going through something and they rely on one person who may not be the best person to handle it, but it's the one who steps up. And then because everyone, as a society or as a family unit agreed, then this person has more authoritative powers. You look at the hyperinflationary period of that Germany went through and then Hitler's rise to power, you can't see the parallelism like a family unit going through something and then one person ends up being the breaking up of the family. So then on answer me that question on the ethos of voluntarism, right? So that's like someone who first taught me Bitcoin, I think it was like Josh Harvey, he said, "Charlie, forget the whole anarchist ending of the Fed. Think of now transcending the Fed, like creating an alternative, better system, and people will voluntarily use this system. That's and that's been always been my personal ethos in this space. How do we reconcile that? How do we do
I
that?
mean, I agree with you. I think it has to be opt-in, has to be voluntary. If it's not a
And the
better
ability to
system,
opt
people
out?
won't opt in. Yeah, meaning the ability to opt out, right? As soon as if all things were equal and you could opt in and opt out of every system, I think we'd find out really quickly the better systems because people would suddenly realize, and it's happening right now. You can see how fast people are deciding they could move from one place to the other, depending on what system is in place, or from one currency to another. I don't think we've even started to see how big that's going to go if we go all the way, but that it's a I would say fundamental that we agree it has to be something that is opt in or opt out, right? That
Yeah.
or it doesn't work. And to answer the question about I mean, it's great responsibility comes with great wealth, and what comes with great responsibility comes with any type of authority. Those are things that we have to be very careful of when we're building systems of authority. But right now we're living. I was born into a system of total authority, and I didn't really realize it for a while. So I think, if anything, I'm extremely optimistic that we're heading on a curve towards more
Yeah, that's
opt-in
true.
consent.
We were
You know,
born into a very
I feel like,
authoritative world.
yeah, if you look at where we're at now, I'm infinitely more optimistic than I was before. Right. That's one of the things I love about Bitcoin. Still, is to me, it's this bright optimism that we can all share in, that nobody necessarily controls, which is critical to it. Right. So
Yeah.
it's still just fundamental that we figure out the family unit is really interesting on so many levels because that's where community starts. And that's how people's upbringing, that's where trauma comes from almost always. That all these things start at the family level. Yet how do you control that? We've got to find a better way to let society evolve and opt in and out of the right systems, I think, to just keep it on point.
So
It's got to
we
be consent.
create digital decentralized tools, right? And so it's interesting because anytime you read the news or you open up any of your newsletters, like I read the Morning Brew or whatever, you read anything, most of the news is about like this business, that, this corporation, that, this government, that, this family unit, this. It's always like related to that. So maybe the common thread is like how we organize ourselves as humans. Maybe that needs to be changed, right? And then we tried that with the DAO. The first DAO had the opportunity to do that, and then there was a big hack and it fell apart. And we had to like take a step back and say maybe we're jumping 10 steps. Uh and so you went ahead and started another project called Equa that essentially like you're trying to, without jumping too many steps, you're trying to like fundamentally change how that organization is run using a system that we're already familiar with. So we have equity, organizational management, cap tables. We have all these things, employee shares and stock. And it's all not just how you're compensated, but it's how you work. It's how you think about work. It's how you go about and treat your family when you get home from work. It's how we're involved in everything. Is the thread is common here. So now how are you changing that? Like what are the problems as you see in organizations today and what are you trying to solve?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this topic, and it's really interesting that when we first met, we were talking about the DAO, right? Right when that happened, right? It's
I
so
think so,
interesting.
yeah.
And we're still talking about the DAO in a way, or
Mm,
DAOs. And so, just like proper, I think a lot of times, there's innovation, and there's just discovery, and then there's just reapplying new technology to old systems. And with Bitcoin to property, treating it as something you could borrow against, it seemed, when you look at it, kind of inevitable. And I'm looking at, where does all this value come from? How do people organize? If we're going to go into this world, we must have a better way to govern than what we're doing right now at the government levels. We all know that one way or another. And these systems exist, yet they don't work for as well as they could. And so I think the promise of blockchain in a lot of ways, or technology at large, is to take some of these systems that are not working and make them work. Like, to jump around a little bit here for a second before I make all my points on the DAOs. If you look at what happened with GameStop, right? There's you can't have fake stuff. If you have fake things where it's in multiple locations or bad copies of things, there's going to be fraud. Just like there's going to be fraud if there's fake identities. There's going to be fraud in all these things whenever you have a system that is flawed. And I think when we look at the way that organizations have been created for a long time, the concepts are great. They don't need to go away. Equity is great. Voting is great. There's all these different ways you can come to consensus. Yet we still have massive freaking problems in our government, and people don't feel represented. We have delegated proof of stake in our government, but it doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? And we all know it doesn't work. And so, how do we make it work? And I feel like you have to go to get to the end, which would be total alignment. And we can touch on that later, of all humanity, all being a part of one society, total alignment, all working for one team with an abundant mindset, not scarcity and fighting with each other. Then you have to go all the way back to the inception of where is value even created? So we have ideas, we have energy every day. We wake up and we put our efforts into things. We think about things, we work on things, and we create wealth. And I'm a proponent or a big believer of transacting with each other in a consensual way where both parties are happy because they transacted, meaning neither person feels like they got the bad end of the deal. And so I'm fascinated, almost probably obsessed with this concept of wealth generation at the transaction layer and how often it goes wrong still today. And I think these types of technologies can really improve that. But if you look at just how organizations come together and how they're formed and the formation stuff, it's kind of arcane the way we're still putting stuff on paper, sticking in
Yeah.
the filing cabinet, and expecting it to mean something. It's like I can't go pull up corporate governance documents somewhere in some file location anytime I want to make a decision. It doesn't work like that. And so what happens is people end up either not making decisions or making bad decisions, or and you start to have this disagreement or unalignment or corruption that can go in all kinds of bad ways. And so I'm really focused on, so how do we realize this idea of a DAO? How do we show what can be tokenized that is of value, not shit coins, but actual taking real value? How do we improve the systems that exist now that hopefully all end up feeding the global economic wealth that we all share in, underpinned by something right now I think is best emblemized by Bitcoin? How do we build on top of that rather than competing with it? And I think that organizing with people and giving people a stake and thinking about how to delegate or make decisions is fundamental. And it even goes deeper than that when you think about how do we agree on what is true? Why do we think some things are objective and some things are subjective? And all these have to come with communication. Like, they're complex topics, right? You have to communicate about things, you have to share information, and then you have to be able to make agreements and disagreements and be able to retract them and change them and evolve them if they're wrong. So getting to the state where if we go where you say we could be going, which I tend to agree, let's say that we are instantaneously connected and working in this large ecosystem that's underpinned, we're going to need to make sure that we've got some fundamental parts of society worked out that right now are not worked out on paper, or the way people think they are just don't
Yeah.
work.
Because they're inefficient. So do you think
Exactly.
if two people are born, one is a have and one is a have not, but they're born with the same exact brain capacity and the same exact ability to think and connect dots together, and theoretically should have the same opportunities. Do you think that the reason that those two different people don't is simply because of that the haves can do things better, faster, more efficiently, have access to more opportunities, more just I
No.
mean, the ability to just go and then take your paycheck and have it direct deposited at a bank, as opposed to having to get your check and then go to a check cashing place and then get raped on half of the fees. Just that efficiency in and of itself, that little small one, is such a fundamental difference between the haves and the have-nots.
This is a great point, right? A hard question. So thank you. It's a tough
I'm not
one. I
trying to
think,
solve them. I just don't want Bitcoin and crypto to be this thing for the haves,
right.
because that's what
No,
I'm
I
not here
agree. So it's
for.
this, well, there's the censorship resistance has to maintain, right? We have to leave it open. The system has to be open. We have to allow for people to come in. It's an interesting topic when you think about so many success stories that have come from people who just don't care. They're set on making something for themselves, and they can come from rags to riches, right? It happens all the time, and it comes out of left field. And so I would never want to discourage anybody from that. I think that's ultimately the goal, is that everybody could be born into this environment where we all
Yeah,
feel optimistic and there's a shot, and we're leveraging off
I
the
love
shoulders of
that.
giants, yet everybody is innovating and building new pieces to it. And I think in a really messy way that still is happening. But is it fair right now? No, totally not. Many people have opportunities that they squander. Many people have don't have
Mm,
opportunities, and that precludes them. Right, like bad things do happen, which causes fear and all these other bad things. But that's not where our attention needs to go. Our attention has to say, how do we continue to maintain the ethos and the values of this that have made it so important? Why is it important? It's not just important because number goes up. That's awesome, but that's not really anything, right? That's a representation of wealth and optimism and exuberance and people having more, but why? And I think if we continue to build what's good for everybody, it benefits, right? And that's hard. It's hard to do. It's really
yeah.
hard because of all the different circumstances and positions people come from. But that's what makes it exciting, right? All opportunities come as obstacles.
What type of products are you launching?
So all the fundamental stuff that you have brought up that you need. So I think about it like this: if we're going to improve how people agree with each other to create these DAOs, and it doesn't have to be DAO. Like I think it could be central to decentral,
Sure.
and that's a whole topic. So I'm mostly interested in perfecting the inception point of a tool where you could say, "Hey, Charlie, I've got an idea I want to share with you." It usually always starts with just sharing some information. One person shares with another. So there's only two parties in any type of organization when you really think about it. Yeah, on paper, often we found this thing and we document it, and then suddenly there's all these people. That's not really how it happens. So I want to get granular on how a DAO would evolve. I don't think you can just poof one out of air, then everybody gets airdrop something. I think it's more realistic how companies get formed, intellectual property gets formed, and ideas kind of get built on, is that it goes from one to two and two to three and three to four. It expands, right? It can go more geometric than that faster. So the tools that we're launching on, how do you create an organization? How do you know that there's ownership rights built into it from day one? How do you
Mm,
know that it's got the permanence of uniqueness that would collect intellectual property? How do we know that when you invite the next person, that there's a decision point on how you're going to evolve the governance, how you're going to evolve the cap table, how you're going to evolve the metrics? And so all these fundamental parts that people have been doing forever at different types of tools, I think all have the ability to be integrated into this type of technology where we could rapidly evolve and have better fixes to
I
problems.
agree.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at any way possible we can improve how people agree with one another so that they can make better decisions, so that we can have an improved version of shared truth, so that we can generate more wealth, right? So all these things are predicated off of one to the other to ultimately get to ultimate alignment of
Like, I don't
how do we
wanna
all feel like,
I don't wanna do like a simple product of, like, the cap table. Like, the best company out there today is Carta, because I invested in a company and I get, like, shares issued there, but it's like
yep,
just a glorified Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't nothing
yeah.
happens. It
Well, one
just
of the things exactly. So, and I won't rag on them, right? Because for
no, but
cap
it's
tables,
fine,
I
but
think
that's
they're the
the
gold standard.
industry ripe for the taking now. Like, there's a whole industry
Totally.
ripe for the taking. It's crazy.
Well, and it's a lot more than that, right? So I think more than a glorified spreadsheet. Okay, great. There's this fatigue, I think, of applications right now where I don't want to download more tools for things unless they tightly integrate, because it's just more fatiguing. And fundamentally, there's this problem with copy and paste on the internet that's
Yeah,
great
there
for
is.
fiction, right? It's amazing for fiction, for creators. But when it comes to things that you want to have certainty on or truth, you need something like Bitcoin. It's just hard. Nobody can edit it, immutable. And with the blend between the two, that's not something that any of these other companies are focused on. They're saying, hey, we'll give you the best possible cap table and look at all this cool stuff you can manage your portfolio with. Well, that's great. But how does that connect? Where does the English and the math and the logic get connected? How do we open that up to where everybody can benefit and evolve from it? Where does the market really need to go in order for us to fully transcend where we're at today into open available markets that are censorship resistance, right? So it's way more than just one of these tools. And I intentionally went after just some primitive tools to start, because you never want to bite off and say, hey, we're going to
Yeah.
solve world health, right? I can immediately. But to underpin that, it's really about this deeper truth of how do we all organize with each other? How do we generate wealth with each other? How do we stay aligned with each other so that we don't destroy wealth, right? These are some really fundamental things I think that we all have to find a way to
It's
solve.
not just wealth though, it's freedom.
Oh, totally.
I'm not trying to scare anyone, but we're going towards a future. Like COVID-19 is just the start. There's going to be more pandemics, unfortunately. We're going to get better at dealing with them. There's going to be other issues, but at the end of the day, there's only one tool we have against those authoritative regimes that even are dressed up as nice democratic governments. You think that everyone has to look and act like a authoritative dictator. It doesn't. You can have shadow organizations that make very nice looking governments look very nice. And at the end of the day, when you have things that look like vaccine passports, et cetera, medical databases that are all centrally run, it's the argument. It's not that we're against the concept of having identity documents that tell us what type of diseases we don't have. That's not the argument. The argument is having it centrally run by people who have no business running our lives. These people they're elected to make laws, not to control our lives, our information, and our money. And at the end of the day, the only tool we have as people against these folks is us, is we have each other. The power of the people. I sign every freaking check and every note that for 10 years with vides in numeris, strength in numbers. That's all we have. So what you're doing is and you say like, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, is you're slowly getting people used to the idea that you can do the things that you've been doing already that we think have to be done by these centralized corporations, governments, but it actually could be run by all of us.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you, Charlie. Like, I think that there's always this terrifying potential future, right? Like there's always fear. And the best thing about fear is it shows you immediately what you don't want. Now, if you dwell on it, you probably get a lot more of it and it don't fix anything and you just go off and do nothing.
It's a good
If
point.
you realize the opposite of it, of what you do want, and take responsibility to say, this is on me. I'm going to do the best I possibly can. I'm going to make the biggest impact I can. If we all do that, we all end up in a better place. And so I completely agree that we have to get it to the individual unit, right? Like, I would be okay in a lot of these circumstances if I knew that you owned your data, I own my data, and we have some relationship between each other that clearly outlines what we're sharing, and we can retract that if we want to. And we can go there. So power in numbers, I love that. I totally do agree that is ultimately where we need to go. And there's a lot of things we have to avoid, right? There's lots of examples of crowds and mobs that are just
Sure.
not the right way of doing it.
Yeah.
But when you think about personal, individual protection and freedom, ultimately, if we can get to the point where, pie in the sky, of course, is that we avoid all of that terrifying, scary stuff by solving better solutions and building it for each of us. If it works for us all equally, that we have the same tools. Now, what people do with that, that's up on their own. So I would never mandate equality or equal this or that. I think
Yeah,
it's
you
that we
can't
all must be
force
treated equal,
equality.
right?
That's the
Right.
problem, right? You can't
So how
force.
do we take this opt-in system?
Yeah.
I really think we all need to focus a lot more on how do we keep the keys to our information. There's a movement now, right? Like, people are moving off some of these social platforms and stuff, but all of the bad stuff comes from abuse of power or the wrong people being able to do the wrong things to others. No consent, right? We have to throw that up. We have
Yeah.
to stay.
Agreed.
It's no exceptions. We are not going to live in a world that is driven by authority only. It's got to be consent driven, all the way down to the family unit. We've got to find a way to where these bad things stop happening. Because if we just keep building crazy, powerful technology and handing it over to people that are in control, a small minority that can control everything, it's horrible. We can't do that, right? And I think deep down, everybody knows that. They're just afraid well, how do we get there? So we just build the tools and continue down this path of empowering people to be able to participate with each other in this society. I think I think we'll get there, right? That's what does drive alignment, is when we all know that it's benefiting everybody here.
And the
Nobody's a
journey
loser.
is better than the just destination, I think. Hey, Sean, how
Sure.
can my listeners uh, follow up with you and read some of your writings and social media and listen to things like that? How can they follow up with you?
Yeah, reach out anywhere. I think Twitter is really easy. Shawn Owen, anywhere on Equa, Equa.global. Any of the sites will take you there where our app is.
Awesome.
You can go to Salt. Anywhere you want to find me online, I'm pretty active. I don't publish a ton of stuff other than just work, but I'd be happy to chat with anybody who's interested or shares the vision mission.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean Owen, for coming on Untold Stories today. I really appreciate it. And you gave me a lot to think about. How do we create more equality without forcing it? It's a hard line to toe. Did I say that right? Toe the line? Yeah, right.
So
It's a
yeah, hard
hard
line to
toe to
toe.
line.
No, Charlie, this is amazing. I love catching up with you. Hopefully see you in Miami or down in Florida sometime
Oh, I
soon. And
can't wait.
so
Bitcoin
happy to see
Miami,
how what you're
June.
doing. Keep up the great work. This show is amazing. I love the show.
Thank you.